days. Okay, if you're rotating your crankshaft every 30 days, it's because you're flying the engine, you're not in storage. Why do we not want to rotate the crankshaft while it's in storage? Most of you got it right. Solid portion got it messed up. Ooh, all right. Okay, so a spun bearing. What is a spun bearing? A spun bearing is when you move the bearing in its housing in the journal. There you go. Bearing cap rotates in the journal. What causes a spun bearing? Okay, a spun bearing will cause a lack of lubrication, but what causes the spun bearing? Okay, most common cause of spun bearings in our engines is rotating the crankshaft with a cylinder off or not enough torque on the cylinder bolts, because the cylinder, what holds those bearings in place is the crush of the cylinders and those big through bolts holding the two crankshaft halves together. So when the engine is storage, moving the propeller is not going to cause a spun bearing unless you've got cylinders off, in which case we're not really in storage, we're working on the engine. The preservative oil is the correct answer. Hydraulic lock. Okay, so Josh, the you're on the you're connecting two things a little bit incorrectly here. When we get ready to put the engine back into flight, back into service, we want to rotate the propeller through at least 2 full revolutions to check for hydraulic lock. Moving the propeller will not cause hydraulic lock, but it will find hydraulic lock. So we don't want to move our propeller because we went to all this trouble of taking the spark plugs out, spraying the inside of the cylinders with preservative oil, and then letting the solvents dry out and make a nice waxy coating protecting our cylinders. If you move the piston, it'll scrape that stuff off the walls. In fact, when you first fire up the engine after storage, they generally let out this enormous cloud of black smoke for the first couple of minutes as they burn off all of that oil in there. There we go. Less intense music. Okay. We've stated that the airplane must be flown at least once every 30 days. It has to leave the ground. So why does it have to leave the ground? Why can't we just run it on the ground? Yeah, how much power can you pull on one of these engines on the ground? Can you run at full throttle for a minimum of 1 hour on the ground? No. Why not? It'll overheat. Right. It needs the wind in its face. So you can't run the engine at 75% power for an hour on the ground. So why isn't just running it until it says it's warmed up enough? They don't get the same amount of like thorough heating. water is a byproduct of combustion. The last thing we want to do is run it, not get it warm enough, and not boil off the water. Continental and Lycoming know for sure that if you fly the airplane, it's going to be putting out enough power and getting warm enough to boil off all that water. So they want it up to full temperature for at least an hour, and you can't do that on the ground, not safely. Only 4 questions, folks. We're just about done this Kahoot. When the crystals turn pink, yes. There's no timeline on it. Remember that picture I showed you, this nice bright blue crystals? That was a brand new desiccant plug, and it's good until they turn pink. As long as they're blue, you're still good to go. Oh, I didn't talk about this. Okay, let's pull up a picture of a pitot cover. So this is what you'll commonly see on, and this is looking at pitot covers, not engine covers, but they're just a good example. Pitot tubes, this is the little tube that senses the airspeed. They're a really critical instrument for the airplane. Airplanes have crashed multiple times because somebody left a plug on or taped over these, and there's a concern from Transport Canada and the FAA, a little tiny hole that a bug is going to crawl in there and die and plug the pitot system. So when it's sitting on the ground, we put these covers on them, and one of the important things is that the cover has got a long red flag on it, and we do this with our engine covers. We want to make it really obvious, all logbook stuff aside, we want to make it really obvious that something is plugged, something is there. So this is to make it impossible for the pilot to claim that they didn't know there was something going on. All right. Anybody get 4 to 4? Oh, yay, a few people got 4 to 4. Okay, that's enough of that. Now, so we are down to plank and